Before we go into the Farbrengen of today, let us review at least very briefly something from last Shabbos as well as from Shavuos. Last Shabbos was Erev Shavuos. The Farbrengen of Erev Shavuos, the Rebbe explained the Shiur Rambam of that day. The Shiur Rambam of Erev Shavuos is regarding a kohen that was tamei when he is permitted to eat truma again. And the Rambam brings out that a kohen that was tamei, when he's tamei, he's prohibited from eating truma. However, once he goes to mikveh and waits till the end of the day, meaning, as the Rambam uses the expression, he waits for sunset and also to 3 medium-sized stars, then he's permitted to eat betruma. So the Rebbe brought out this halach in the Rambam and explained it al pi pnimis haTorah. The Rebbe says when we're talking about a kohen, it doesn't necessarily refer to a gashmiistic kohen. Kahuna can refer to a ruchniistic kohen as well. And what do we mean by a spiritual kohen? Every yid has the capability of being a kohen. There's a famous Rambam, which the Rebbe quotes very often. In fact, the Rebbe mentioned it today, also this inyan. The Rambam says, Lo shevet Levi bilvad. When we're talking about a kohen and a Levi, it doesn't necessarily mean somebody who is physically a descendant of the tribe of Levi. But anyone, the Rambam says, Asher nodva liboy veruchoy, anyone whose heart and spirit volunteer for an extreme dedication to the Eibishter, the Rambam says, this type of person is considered a member of Shevet Levi. And the Rambam concludes with the words that he is Kodesh Kadashim. When the Rebbe explains this again, the Rebbe adds on that when the Rambam uses the expression Kodesh Kadashim, that means not only can one reach the level of Kehuna, but one can reach the level of a Kohen Gadol, because who is Kodesh Kadashim? Who enters the Kodesh Kadashim? It's the Kohen Gadol. So, what we're deriving from all this is that when we're talking about Kehuna, spiritually in Ruchnius, naturally Begashmius, who did David the Beis HaMikdash? No one other than a Kohen and a Levi, Kohenim and Leviim. But when we're talking about the Ruchniistic part of Kehuna, this implies to each and every Yid. Every Yid is capable to reach to the level of Kehuna. The Rebbe goes further, there's a pasuk. This pasuk was said into the introduction to Matan Torah. Ve'atem tiyuli mamleches kohanim v'goy kodesh. The Rebbe says that each and every Yid is a member in a mamleches kohanim, in a kingdom of kohanim. And this applies to every Yid. So when we're talking about the concept of Kehuna, it doesn't necessarily limit itself to those who are physically descendants of the Shevet of Levi, but any Yid can reach this level. What's the whole inyan of Levi? If we were to touch up the word Levi, Levi means attachment. I've been mentioned today the pasuk, V'yelavu alecha v'yisharsucha. They will become attached to you and they will serve you. So in Ruchnius it is, when a Yid becomes attached to the Rebbeinu Shalom, this is an inyan of Levi. What does the Rambam tell us here? That when a kohen wants to eat truma, what is truma? Truma consists of 2 words. Torah mem. Torah, which was given the 40 days. Moshe Rabbeinu was spent 40 days on Har Sinai to receive the Torah. So the Rambam brings out, how can a kohen, and now again when we're talking about kohen, it doesn't necessarily mean kohen, it means every Yid. How can every Yid eat truma? What do we mean by eating truma? So the Rebbe stresses, there's an inyan of learning Torah, there's an inyan of digesting Torah. Digesting is a type, not just we learn it, but we become totally united with it. It becomes part of the person's body. When one eats something, it becomes part of him. So the same thing when we're talking about eating truma in Ruchnius, what do we mean? We mean absorbing Torah and digesting Torah. to the extent that Torah is becoming totally united with him. How can a Yid reach this madrege? And how can he achieve that? So the Rambam continues. That is when he sees 3 stars. What is the inyan of 3 stars? 3 stars, that's the inyan of the Ovis. Chlal the Rebbe brings out, an Neshama is considered a koichav, a star. There's a pasuk, Dorach koichav miyankov. It's in the psukim of Pashas Bolok. So there are 2 interpretations on this pasuk. One interpretation is that it applies to every Yid. Every Yid is considered a koichav, a star. Another interpretation is that doesn't apply to every Yid, it applies to Mashiach, the star of Mashiach. So when the Rebbe discusses this inyan, he always mentions that there's a Sefer Moyer Einayim from Rab Nachum of Chernobyl. And there he brings out, the Rebbe also stresses it in other areas, that when there are more than one Perush, when there's more than one Perush in an inyan, it really means that these Perushim are all associated. So based on this, Rab Nachum of Chernobyl brings out, means that every Yid has a spark of Mashiach within him. Being that one interpretation on the pasuk goes Dorach koichav miyankov v'daskit of Mashiach. There's another interpretation that it refers to every Yid. So he's kind of combining both of these pirushim, that every Yid has a nitzutz, a spark of Mashiach within him. Getting back to our union, the 3 koichavim. What says 3 koichavim? There are 3 others, which each and every one of us refers to them as avinu. They are our fathers. Fathers to each and every Yid, meaning that the Rebbe explains in Tanya, that each and every Yid inherited from them, from Avraham, Yitzchak, V'Yankiv, koiches to din and the Medrash. So it is with these koiches of the shloisha koichavim that a Yid can reach to be an oichel b'tchum. Then the Rebbe goes on, continues, what is the word in the Rambam? The Rambam says koichavim beinanim, medium stars, medium-sized stars. The Rebbe says when we're talking about beinanim, Chassidim he reminds us on the Tanya. Tanya is called Sefer Shel Beinanim. What does the Alter Rebbe bring out in Tanya? That the derech for every Jew is to strive to be a Beinani. So Mamela, it is again brought out through the koiches of the Shloisha Koichavim, meaning the 3 stars, meaning the others. They have inherited koiches to each and every Yid, that every Yid can come to this level of being considered a Beinani. And Mamela, this gives a Yid koyach to be an oichel b'tchuma. It was in the Shavuos the Farbrengen. Just touching it very briefly, we want to get to today's Farbrengen and have time to go to the Kabbalah Spanim. In the Shavuos the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke very, very strongly about the obligation that's on each and every one of us to utilize all our efforts and all our strength for whatever type of involvement possible. Rebbe said that there was an expression from the Frierdiker Rebbe. But the Frierdiker Rebbe said he didn't say it quietly. He said it loud and made sure that it should reach to everyone. Frierdiker Rebbe said that everyone is capable of being an oisek b'tzorchei tzibur. Everybody has the capability of being actively involved in communal work, and therefore it's everyone's responsibility to live up to this requirement. The Rebbe spoke at length. Shavuos, in fact, in today's Farbrengen, the Rebbe came back to it. The Rebbe was talking about the situation in Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe brought out that there are hundreds of thousands of children in Eretz Yisrael that could have been getting a Jewish chinuch, and they are not getting this chinuch. There are areas, vast pockets of Yidden that Yiddishkeit is not getting close to them. The Rebbe says, you see a person in the street, you see the person is not wearing a yarmulke, so right away we know that he's lacking Yiras Shamayim. The Indian of a yarmulke, a kisei aroish, wearing something covered on our heads, that's a reflection of Yiras Shamayim. The Rebbe says we're not getting involved with it. It's an obligation min HaTorah, or it's an obligation with the Rabbanon, or it's with Divrei Seifrim. Let's not get involved with these details. Fact is that the Indian of wearing something on one's head, this has to do with Yiras Shamayim. And maybe when we see the people that are lacking this, So this right away is indicating that they are lacking Yiras Shamayim. And there are many, many such complete areas and regions in Eretz Yisrael, and where nobody has touched, and nobody has gone close, and offered these Yidden a taste of Torah. In fact, today the Rebbe spoke on the same issue, talking about the situation in Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe was talking about it today. He brought out, he says, in Gemara we find, the Gemara gives various simonim, indications, what the generation of Mashiach will look like. The Gemara describes it would be Bas Kama Be'ima, V'Kala B'Chamayis. It would be an Indian of lack of derech eretz. Mother for daughter would not have the proper respect, as well as daughter-in-law for mother-in-law. And the Rebbe says we see that all these prophecies which the Gemara is saying what the generation of Mashiach will look like, we see this in reality. All the details which the Gemara describes, we see. And at the same time, to prepare ourselves and to prepare these Yidden properly, what they should be like when Mashiach will come, this is not done. The hundreds of thousands of children that should be getting a Jewish chinuch, and they're not getting it. The Rebbe says, then what are we going to say? They're going to claim it's a question of democracy. You cannot force a child to give him a Jewish chinuch because it's not in accordance to democracy. And if the country of Israel will not act in accordance to democracy, what is it going to lead to? Perhaps it will lead that the financial aid which it's getting from other countries may stop. The Rebbe says, why don't we realize and why don't we understand that all the financial aid that Eretz Yisrael is getting is coming from the Rabbeinu Shlomo, and the one who is Zon or Mefarnes, who feeds everyone and is feeding the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael as well, and it's being channeled in such a way of financial aid which is coming through from other countries. Furthermore, the Rebbe says, even the other countries themselves, even the Goyish countries, who is feeding them and who is providing them with all their needs, it's also the Rabbeinu Shlomo. The only thing is the Gemara says, Ein mazel Yisrael. Yidden don't have a mazel. In other words, other nations are being channeled, their hashpah, their bracha from the Rebishter is being channeled through a mazel. Mashenkin Yidden are receiving things directly from the Rebishter. But taka through the mazel. But again, from who is everyone getting everything? Everyone, all the nations and all the countries are all getting their parnasa from the Rabbeinu Shlomo. So again, why make such type of calculations that it may not seem proper and according to democracy or whatever? Rabbi says the same mistake, like they're making on this thing and they're making other mistakes. The other mistake is the fact is that Yerushalayim, the old city of Yerushalayim, does not have a majority of Yidden. And why is this? They're making all types of excuses and all types of tirutzim and whatnot, and to circumvent and to work around that Yidden should not be able to settle in the old city of Yerushalayim. But again, on the other hand, Rebbe says it was already seen. There were cases in court, and obviously he was referring to Israeli courts, where children themselves have shown tremendous desire that the child has to learn Yiddishkeit. And the child was crying and begging that the child wants to learn Yiddishkeit, and then the permission was given to the child. But why have to go through such a process? Why can't it be in a way that Taka, these hundreds and thousands of Yiddish kinder, and Eretz Yisrael, why should they be denied a proper Yiddish chinuch? Let us go back a little to the Farbrengen of today, to the earlier part of the Farbrengen. The Chlal, I could say the entire Farbrengen today, in every Sikha, the theme of the Farbrengen was basically V'hachai yiten eliboy. This is the expression which the Rebbe keeps on repeating since the passing of the Rebbetzin. The concept of V'hachai yiten eliboy, meaning V'hachai, the lebedike, yiten eliboy, we have to give it to our hearts, we have to take it to our hearts. It's a kind of an expression by the Rebbe when the Rebbe wants to bring out what do we really have to do as far as Hamaisa hu eiker, or as far as what is the heroya, what is the lesson which we derive from specific inyanim. The Rebbe is constantly referring to it with the expression of the Hacha Yiten El Liboy. In fact, the Farbrengen today, he also began, he says, we are talking about Vahacha Yiten El Liboy. And this is the Shabbos which is following Shavuos. Not only is it the Shabbos which is coming after Shavuos, but it is the Shabbos of Yud Beis Sivan, 12 days in the month of Sivan, and 12 days in the month of Sivan, this is when the climax of Shavuos really ends, because Bisman Habayis, when all the Yidden would come to the Beis HaMikdash, and everyone would be obligated to bring his korban, so a Yontif of Pesach, a Yontif of Sukkot, which lasted for a week, so every Yid had an opportunity to bring his korban. However, Shavuos, which in the time of the Beis HaMikdash lasted only for one day, how was it possible for all the Yidden to be makriv their korbanos? So the Gemara explains, there was an extension given. Until 12 days in Sivan, everyone had an opportunity to be makriv their korban, which is almost a week, to make sure that every Yitaka has a chance to be makriv his korban. And for this reason, we do not recite Tachnun until 12 It's kind of not... Every week it's like a different pattern, let me put it this way. It is not following the old pattern which has been for years. For years you knew, first few sichos would be Yonim, then would be the Maimon, and after the Maimon would start Rashi, Rambam, Levi Yitzchak, and then Pirkei Avos. Now it works different. But again, changes from week to week. Means an uplifting. Naso means to uplift. So the Rebbe is teaching. This Sedra begins with Naso Yisroish B'nei Gershon Gamheim. Also uplift the people of Gershon. What's the pshat? Also Gam? Because in the previous Sedra we discussed about Kahos. And after Kahos comes also Gershon. What is the difference between Kahos and Gershon? Kahos were the people that carried the Oren. What is the Oren? The Oren is Torah. So we say, who are the main that to them applies the Naso Yisroish? It applies to Kahas. Why? Because they had a shaykhs to their whole union was Torah. But the pasuk now was telling us also B'nei Gershon also. In other words, also means they're kind of like secondary to Kahas, because Kahas is the main union, the main one who the Torah is telling us the Naso about. Because Kahas' union is Torah. And furthermore, the Rebbe brought out at the end of the Sedra, we find the last pasuk of the Sedra is Moshe L'Oyel Moed L'Daber Itoy. Moshe would come to the Oyel Moed L'Daber Itoy to talk with him, with whom? With the Rabbeinu Shalom. And what's the inyan of Dibur when we're talking about it? It's also right away reminding us, when we hear the word Dibur, it reminds us on the Dibur of Torah. In Torah itself, there's Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. Regarding Torah Shebiksav, the halacha is that if one says Torah Shebiksav, even though he does not understand what he's saying, there's no problem. In fact, the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, that is why an Amaretz can also make Birchas HaTorah every day, even though he does not learn Torah and does not understand Torah, but being that he's saying the psukim of Torah, which he says in davening, right away following Yivrach Hashem Yishmerecha, the psukim which we say right after Birchas HaTorah. Being that he's saying these psukim, so he's saying Torah. And for saying Torah, one has to make Birchas HaTorah. He doesn't understand. So by Torah Shebiksav, even though we don't understand, we've also considered the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. However, by Torah Shebal Peh, we must understand. If one would say Torah Shebal Peh and not understand what he's saying, then he's not mekayim the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. So now that we're after Shavuos, and we're talking about the Vahacha Yitin and Liboy that Shavuos has to give us, what does it have to give? It has to give an increase in Torah. That in Torah, we shouldn't be in a position of learning Torah and not understanding, but learning Torah and understanding properly, and adding on in the learning of Torah, and be meisef more and more in the union of Limud Torah. Because over here in the Sikh, I don't recall what the Shaykhis was, but here the Rebbe was talking about Reb Shimon ben Yochai, about Rashbi. Could be that on Rashbi we always say Torah Yom Nosoi. Reb Shimon ben Yochai, his full occupation was Torah. In fact, it's brought out in Chassidus that he was at such a madrege that even though he lived in the generation of the Churban, to him To him it was kind of like there was no chulm. Was meint das? Like, pshat chulm. Whole idea of the chulm is the revelation of godliness is not as it was, like in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. To Reb Shimon ben Yochai it was not that way. He was not lacking any inyan of Gilui Elokus. So here the Rebbe mentioned that Reb Shimon ben Yochai, as we know, was for 13 years in the cave. Brought out, what's the inyan of 13? Number 13 is a very significant number. And it's even a higher madrega than the number of 10. Echad is equivalent to 13. That's the inyan of whole inyan of Reb Shimon ben Yochai. The whole inyan of Reb Shimon ben Yochai was the proper madrega of being associated with the Eibishter, with Echad, with the Rabbeinu Shalom. The Rebbe continued in the Farbrengen and explained also a Rambam in today's Shia Rambam. And today, it's the beginning of the halachas of Meiser. Meiser Sheni and Meiser Oni. Now the system was with the Meisers as follows. From everything that grew, from all the wheat, we had to give Truma. Truma would go to the Kohen. However, there was also a need to give Meiser, a tenth of everything, which would go to the Levi. Then there is a Trumas Meiser. I'm sorry. Trumas Meiser is something else. Trumas Meiser is the Levi would have to give a Truma of the Meiser to the Kohen. Then there's Meiser Sheni and there's Meiser Oni. Meiser Sheni and Meiser Oni would work on a rotating system. For 2 years it would be Meiser Sheni, then for the 3rd year it would be Meiser Oni. And then repeat again. Meiser Sheni would mean that the person would have to take a certain amount of the fruit and wheat and whatever grew in his fields and his vineyards and take it to Yerushalayim and eat it and enjoy it in Yerushalayim. The reason for this, Sefer HaChinuch gives the reason for this. It's so simple. When a Yid would come to Yerushalayim, taka with his own fruit and with his own food, and he would spend it there in Yerushalayim and enjoy it there in Yerushalayim. What would it lead to? It would lead to an increase in the Yid's closeness to the Eibishter. What's the whole inyan of Yerushalayim? What does a Yid see in Yerushalayim? A Yid came to Yerushalayim and he saw the Avodah, and he saw the Koyanim, and he saw the Leviim, and he saw people being makriv korbanis. What's the whole inyan of a korban? See, this taichus korban stems from the word kiruv, closeness. Through being makriv a korban, a Yid becomes close with the Eibishter. What's the whole inyan of Yerushalayim? Yerushalayim, it's brought in Sfarim, is composed of 2 words. Yirei Sholem, the highest level of God-fearing. When a Yid came to Yerushalayim, this would lead to it that he would become, his Yirah Shamayim would be uplifted. So the mere fact that a Yid is spending time in Yerushalayim, is away from his Gashmistic day-to-day life, and he's spending time in Yerushalayim, this is causing within him a Ruchniistic uplifting. So that would be Meiser Sheni. So 2 years in a row he would do this practice. Then the 3rd year he would give an additional Meiser to the Oni, to the Araman, to the poor person. We know there's an union of Leket, Shikra, Peah. There's certain contributions which a person, when he has his fields and his trees growing and his fields growing and his wheat and so forth, he has his stock obligation. So one of these stock obligations is also Meiser Oni, which is once in 3 years, giving a special Meiser to the poor. So the Rebbe brings to our attention that if we look into the Rambam, where the Rambam explains this halacha, the Rambam keeps on using the expression Yatrishenu, which in Hebrew means he would set aside this Meiser. Obviously he has to give it. It's not enough the fact that he's setting it aside. So what do we see from the Rambam? We see from the Rambam that as far as the mitzvah of Meiser, as far as making the food permitted to be eaten, it is enough that he's matrish. It is enough that he just puts it aside. He can have it in his field, he can have it put aside, he can have it put aside in his house in a special corner, and when the poor person will come, he will give it to him. See, Tvuah wheat before Truma and Meiser is being taken off. In Hebrew it is called Tevel. Tevel. What is the meaning of Tevel? So the Rebbe mentioned today, Tevel means Toiv Loi. It is not good yet. It cannot be eaten yet. However, once he has set aside all the inyanim that have to be taken off, then he's permitted to eat, even though it did not reach the poor person. Tzedakah, the mitzvah of tzedakah, is different. We cannot say that a person has fulfilled the mitzvah of tzedakah if he's just put it aside. He has money ready for tzedakah, and he put it aside, and he has it set aside in his drawer that he fulfilled the mitzvah of tzedakah. Tzedakah is, we have to feed the poor person. We have to feed him. Feed him. How do you feed him? When you make sure it reaches him. When it reaches him and he has it and he can spend it and enjoy it, that is the mitzvah of tzedakah. Otherwise, it's not tzedakah. The Rebbe mentioned famous Chazal that David HaMelech complained to the Rebbeinu Shloim, why did you set up a system of rich and poor? Why couldn't you have done l'katchila that everybody should have whatever they need? So the Rebbe answered him, Chesed ve'emes man yantzeruhu. If I was to do something like that, who would be in charge of charity and kindness? Because the way the Rebbeinu Shloim set up the world, the Rebbe set up the world that it works in a system of mashpia and mekabel, of give and take. Memele, it had to be in such a way, there has to be the one who is the recipient, and there's the one who gives. And this is how the Rebbe set it up. However, getting back to our inyan, the inyan of the Maisres, Meiser and Truma, here we see from the Rambam that even though it has not reached to the Kohen or to the Levi yet, or even the case of Meiserani over here, it is still considered that he has done his share, and it's permitted to eat the food. Same the Rebbe brought out in Ruchnis. Rebbe says at times we are in a position that we want to help somebody. However, there is no one around who's in need of help. Talking about the inyan of Yafutza Ma'inasecha Futza, to spread Chassidus and to reach out to other people. However, one may say that he doesn't have whom to reach out. So first of all, we are told that what we have to do is we have to be mafresh. Just like by the Meiser, you have to set aside the Trumas and the Meisres. The same over here. We have to be ready. We have to prepare ourselves and be ready to make sure that we are ready and equipped to be able to go out and reach out to other Yidden and familiarize them and bring them close to Chassidus. But furthermore, the Rebbe says, this concept existed years ago. Years ago, one was able to say that he cannot reach the chutzah. He doesn't. There's nobody around him whom he should reach out to and be a mekar of Chassidus and bring them closer to the well of Chassidus, to the mayonas of Chassidus. However, nowadays it's not that way. Nowadays we're in a position where there are many, many Yidden whom we are to reach out to and are not as yet fortunate that they should be close to Chassidus. Memela, we have to know now we cannot be in a position of just setting aside the Meiser. In other words, just like preparing ourselves and not doing it in reality. Now what we have to do is make sure that we reach out to every Yid. Reach out to every Yid and make sure that every Yid Chassidus reaches to him. That's the whole meaning of Chassidus. Yafutzu Ma'inasecha Chutza, to bring the wellsprings of Chassidus and bring them out to the Chutza. The Rashi, which the Rebbe explained, is extremely brief. The Rebbe recently is talking in the Farbrengen on the first Rashi of the Seder, but he spoke very brief on it. Where Rashi says, Naso Yisroish b'nei Gershon gam hein, beginning of this week's Seder, which tells us also to count the children of Gershon. And here Rashi says, Kemoishit zivisicha al b'nei Kohos, just like I've told you regarding the children of Kahos, to see how many are capable of doing the Avodah,
The same thing do also to the children of Gershon.
So here the Rebbe is stressing that Rashi is telling us what the count is for. Not stam a count to know how many people they are, because if stam a count to know how many people they are, this we have already in Parshas Bamidbar. So there's no need for that here again in Parshas Naso. So that's why Rashi is stressing that the count should be to know Lirois, to find out how many are there that they are capable of doing the avodah. That's the pshat in the Rashi. And the same reason the Bnei Gershon are also counted. Let me explain. Seems like on Friday. On Friday, the Rebbe called in Rabbi Krinsky and told him that Agudas Chassidei Chabad should make a Kabbalas Ponim this Motzei Shabbos for all the orchim, for all the guests that came here for Shavuos. And interesting, in today's Farbrengen, the Rebbe gave special attention to this Melave Malke. When the Rebbe called for all those that had given in a bottle of mashke to come up and get the mashke and announce what the mashke is for, as the custom is usually in 770 at every Farbrengen, where the Rebbe wants that everyone should announce what the mashke is for and invite everyone to participate in whatever type of masibah it is, gathering it is. The Rebbe mentioned specifically all those who have given him mashke, and specifically, and he said, regarding the Melave Malke, which Agudas Chassidei Chabad is making tonight, which is a reception, a Kabbalas Ponim, for all the guests that have came here from all parts of the world, whether they came here as emissaries from their countries and cities, or even if they were not appointed to be emissaries. The Rebbe says, still there is a cloud. The Gemara tells us, Zochin lo odom shaloi befonav. We can do a favor for somebody, we can bring merit to somebody, even though it is not in his presence. Memele, those Yidden that are here from other cities and other countries, they are here really representing all those people, even though they were really not appointed by them to represent them. And the Rebbe mentioned that again. It was announced already regarding this Melave Malke after davening tonight, and after davening last night, taka tonight again, and after davening this morning. But nonetheless, it should be announced again that everyone should participate in this Melave Malke. Melave Malke is taking place in 770 tonight. It was somewhere in the Sichas today where the Rebbe was stressing. The Rebbe keeps on reiterating that this year is a year of Hakel and a year of Tismach. Rebbe mentioned also that when we're talking about Hakel, really, these days, the days after Shavuos, it's appropriate to talk about Hakel. Why? Because the first Hakel was really by Matan Torah. When the Rebishter had all the Yidden present at Matan Torah, Noshim, V'taf, even those that were born in later generations, everyone participated in the Matan Torah. So Matan Torah was really a Hakel. Now let's continue in the Farbrengen. Rebbe also brought out a Zohar. And this Zohar in Parshas Naso is a Zohar which we recite in Tikkun of Shavuos. When we come to the part of Zohar, we mention that excerpt from the Zohar. The Zohar there tells us about the great love which the Rebishter has to Yidden. And in turn, the great love which Yidden have to the Rebishter. And the Zohar brings 3 psukim. Ahavti eschem omar Hashem. The Rebishter says, I like you, Yidden. Then there's a pasuk, Va'ahavtos Hashem elikecha, that Yidden should like the Rebishter. We should have our love to the Rebishter. There's a third pasuk. Anybody who remembers, please speak up. And the Zohar says that this Indian has a shaychus to Matan Torah. And he brings a mashal. There was a mashal, a people in the city presented a king with 3 crowns. The king was extremely excited with the crowns that he got from his citizens. So what did he do? 1 he put on upon himself, and 2 he put on the heads of his children. The same the Medrash says that the joy which was aroused by the Rebishter when the Yidden said Naso before Nishma. So there's the crown of Naso, and there's the crown of Nishma, and then we have the crown which came about as a result from being makdim, from putting before Naso to Nishma. In other words, what the Yidden said, expressed that they are willing to do and they will follow whatever the Rebishter says, even prior to Nishma. Nishma means listening. Listening means understanding. So the Yidden said, even before we understand, we are ready for Naso, we are ready for doing. So this led to the third Kesser. Rabbi brought out the importance, the great inyanim of Avas Hashem, and the Ava from the Rebishter to Yidden. And that is why the Rebbe says, the Rambam in Hilchos Shuvah tells us that the greatest level of serving the Rebishter is serving the Rebishter through Ava, through love. And the Rambam ties it into Avram Avinu. Regarding Avram, the Pasuk tells us that the Rebishter refers to him as Avram Oyhavi. Avram, the one who loves me. And this, the Rambam is saying, is the highest level which a person can reach, is to the Madrega of Ava. And the highest level of serving the Rebishter is through Ava. Well, it's again a Zoya that has a Shaykhis to Matan Torah, and the Vahacha Yiten Eliva, the Rebbe keeps on saying, the Chayra in it is very obvious on the importance of Avas Hashem. Somewhere in the Sichas, I don't recall where, the Rebbe mentioned that in the writings of the Frierdiker Rebbe it is mentioned that Chassidim had a minig that besides their Gashmiistic birthday, besides celebrating the Gashmiistic birthday, meaning the day one was born, Chassidim also had a minig that they would celebrate the day they arrived in Lubavitch, or the day which was the first Yechidus. And Chassidim viewed that as their birthday, kind of like a Ruchniistic birthday. I haven't mentioned this vote today. It's also customary in the Farbrengens that the Rebbe refers to a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Rebbe says if we look into this week's Pirkei Avos to find the Shaykhis to Limud HaTorah, it's very obvious. How does Pirkei Avos begin? With Moshe Kibul Torah Misina. So we're right away talking about the receiving of Torah. Moshe received Torah from Sinai, Umesara li Yeshua, and he gave it over to Yeshua, and ultimately it reached to each and every Yid. Torah has a shaykhus to every Yid. Every Yid can have access to Torah. And therefore every Yid has to realize his responsibility regarding V'hamidu Talmidim Harbe. This is what the Mishnah continues. In the first Mishnah, what is one of the 3 things which they said? Hamidu Talmidim Harbe. Raise up many disciples. And this is something which everyone should try to follow, to see to it, to bring as many Yidden close to Torah. That's the union of Hamidu Talmidim Harbe. So the Rebbe asked, always we keep on saying that a person is supposed to be a mehalech. A person is supposed to keep on going higher and higher, never to satisfy himself at whatever level he is, to keep on going higher. What does the Mishnah say here? V'hamidu talmidim harbe. Was der Teich v'hamidu? V'hamidu the Teich, stell avek. Stell avek, put down, put up many talmidim. But this is not sufficient. It's not sufficient that we put up talmidim and they remain in the same level. We always discuss, Rebbe says we always keep on talking, that what is the proper derech? The proper derech is that one should not be an oimed. An oimed means he's standing still. What should one be? One should be a mehalech. The Rebbe brought out, he says as follows. He says, it is the obligation of the Rav to see to it that he is him maimed. In other words, stellt him avek of seine eigene Fies. In other words, that he puts down what we put up, our disciples, that they should be able to stand on their own feet. Once he's already able to stand on his own feet, then it is the disciple's responsibility that he should keep on going higher and higher, that he should be a mahalech. He should keep on going higher on his own. Rabbi says we see it in Gashmias. We see, what does a person enjoy more? Does he enjoy more when he says over a Geschmacke Inyan and learning, which he heard from his Rebbe, from his Rav? Or does a person enjoy more a Geschmacke Inyan and learning, which he himself has accomplished? Naturally, an Inyan which a person was able to accomplish himself, and dwell into the in-depth of Torah on his own, and be able to mechadish and chiddush and Torah on his own, this is naturally much more dear to the person. And every Yid, Taka has his chelik and Torah that he can be mechadish. How do we say? V'sein chelkeinu b'seirasecha. We're asking from the Rebishter that he should guide us to our chelik in Torah. Every Yid has a chelik in Torah. And therefore every Yid is capable of learning Torah, and learning Torah on his own, and going higher and higher, deeper and deeper in the learning of Torah. So as far as the responsibility of the Rav, it is until the Hamidu Talmidim Harva, you put up many Talmidim. You make sure that they are on a level of being able to stand on their own feet. Once they are in a position of oindim, of standing, then on their own, they will already go from Madrege to Madrege, higher and higher, being a Mahalech, going higher and yet higher. The Rebbe concluded the Farbrengen again with the inyan of V'hacha Yiten Eliboy. So, it's about to conclude, being that what we are stressing throughout the entire Farbrengen is the inyan of V'hacha Yiten Eliboy. May it be the will of Kodesh Baruch Hu that the V'hacha Yiten Eliboy should be reflected in all inyanim where it's needed. And Chazal tell us, what is the reward for a mitzvah? What is the schar that the Rebbe gives for a mitzvah? Mitzvah. Schar mitzvah, mitzvah. And all inyanim of mitzvahs, of Torah mitzvahs, should be reflected strongly the V'hacha Yiten Eliboy until the ultimate inyan of Torah mitzvahs, which is the inyan of Mashiach, should be like ikvam to heref ayin, as the Rebbe always keeps on stressing. Also an expression which is used very often by the Rebbe, that once the moment for Mashiach comes, then the Rebbe should not hold us back, even keheref ayin, not even like split second, as long as it takes to blink with an eye. Not even an extra heref ayin should the Rebbe hold us back and take us out of Golus right away. One other interesting nekuda which the Rebbe mentioned in the Farbrengen, when the Rebbe was talking about the importance of giving the children in Eretz Yisrael a proper chinuch, the Rebbe mentioned that in Eretz Yisrael there are organizations which are called Tipas Cholov, a drop of milk. I think these are like kind of clinics or so for children, for newborns. So he says in Eretz Yisrael they're concerned about the tipas cholov, about the drop of milk for the newborn infant. However, why don't they show proper concern for a tipas chayim, for a drop of life? And when we're talking about life, what is the life of a Yid? It's Torah. Kihein chayenu ve'orech yameinu. What is the source of life for each and every Yid? That is Torah. So Mamela, what has to be the prime concern for Jewish children? To see that they get what is vital for their lives, and what is vital and important for the lives of children all over, and particularly when the Rebbe was talking today about Jewish children in Eretz Yisrael, it's the inyan of Torah. A good